All right, so we're just going to dive into it, starting with live production.
We're going to kick it off with trends in live and broadcast technology. When it came to key trends, there was a few big headlines that stole the show. Auto-tracking cameras leveraging face and body detection were a major trend this year. AI has improved accuracy, making subject tracking more predictable. On the high end, products like Ross Video launched the Vision Airy studio robotic control system it's going to be great for newsrooms, while advanced image robotics kind of stole the show, introducing the Air 1, a cloud-controlled system delivering cinematic image quality that can be controlled remotely on an iPad. For budget-conscious buyers, PTZ cameras from Sony, Panasonic, and JVC now feature face and body detection at a price under $1,500. IP-based standards and Ethernet infrastructure continued to dominate upgrades in new and aging facilities. SMPTE 2110 led the way in high-end applications for newsrooms, sports, and outside broadcasts. Blackmagic Design showcased 15 new SMPTE 2110 ready products at NAB 2024. NDI made waves with NDI 6, adding HDR 10-bit color and WAN improvements for NDI Bridge, perfect for multi-site workflows. NDI-compatible all-in-one switchers also emerged, including the long-awaited 12G-ready TriCaster Vision, QuickLink Studio Pro, and Ross Video's first NDI-ready Carbonite code. Remote production saw a big leap forward thanks to advancements in 5G and Starlink. Major events like the Paris Olympics outsourced control rooms to the US, while political events across the US used remote contribution for live appearances nationwide. Speaking of the Paris Olympics, this year's game set the benchmark for new workflows and technology, from HDR capture and Dolby Atmos immersive sound to AI-powered multicam replays and fully remote operations using 5G. Let's get into it.
All right, so I'd like to start with the Paris Olympics because I think it is just such a big event and it incorporates some of the highest end technology. It's definitely the flagship broadcast of the year. The Olympic tends to lead the way in leveraging new technology and new workflows. Steve, what were the new noteworthy technologies used at the Olympics this year that you would expect to see more of in live sports and other live productions coming into the new year?
I certainly happily to answer that one, Matt. While there's a lot of innovations, I think there's kind of a key overarching thing that we got to pay attention to at first, and that is that the biggest takeaway from the Olympics was that the total all-around progress across the entire production workflow using these new technologies brought the viewer closer to the action, was more immersive, and set standards that the sports broadcast industry is going to lean into going forward for a long time to come. Some of the key ones, as you mentioned in the pre-roll, were things like 5G that enabled us to put cameras in places that we've never been before, and then using Starlink as a backhaul, be able to get that in near real time back into the production facility so it could be properly switched, cut, etc., for the production value. The IP technologies embedded with 2110 enabled a lot of that content to be moved around easily and quickly, and made it so that the overall infrastructure could be quite flexible and repurposed. There's another part there that's kind of more a little high end, and that is technologies such as microservices running in Kubernetes containers on standard servers. Were reused quite a bit at the Olympics, making it possible to lower the cost of ownership to get the Olympics done, and then sell those boxes off for other uses later on, and then repurpose them as needed by simply recreating a new workflow with a new customer. So all these technologies converge to make probably the most immersive, most invigorating Olympics I think that we've seen in a very long time.
Jeff, awesome. And I know you and Jeff were both at the SVG Summit, right? I think you're both still in New York, or not? You're back, Steve. Jeff, you're still out there. Were you able to attend any of the Olympic sessions, Jeff? And anything you saw there?
The one thing I saw about the Olympics that was interesting is the bulk of the control room was done out of
Stanford, Connecticut, despite the fact the Olympics were in Paris. So it's remote production. It's not cloud-based production, but remote production. NBC has a giant facility they built out there for a large number of the other properties, like working with NFL and the NBA and all those other things, and they just repurposed it for the Olympics and added on capacity. It's one of those facilities that's always doing something extremely cool.
Jeff, that's a really good point. That NBC, who was featured at SVG and in a session, made good use of the technologies to be able to do that in remote production. But that same thing was duplicated by numerous countries throughout the world because it was easy to subscribe to the streams in a multicast environment. The infrastructure didn't have to get out of control to be able to give everybody those kinds of feeds and be able to have their own remote production capabilities wherever they were located in the world. So that's really advancing the capabilities of production across the globe, but it can also be applied here in the U.S. as well. Being able to send enough home feeds for an away team so that they can do the same level of production that the home team is able to do.
And Steve, wasn't there something about AI multicam replay systems? Like how is that? Do you know anything about that part of the Olympics? And do you think this is going to be now used on Sunday Night Football, or maybe it's already being used on Sunday Night Football? What are your thoughts on the AI replay stuff?
Yeah, so AI had a significant part to play in this. Although I would say that the Olympics is going to be more known as the 5G Olympics than an AI Olympics. Where AI really came into play was being able to like with the cameras, being able to track the action and also be able to put up information quickly on the speed of a ball being hit or position of a swimmer, all that other content that helps you to stay immersed in the action that's going on. So leveraging those kind of AI technologies to improve camera angle, camera image, image quality, audio, even to the point where there was text conversion going on that is now embedded with the audio so that you have metadata that you can use in post-production to do a better job of getting the audio right. You know how it was being collected, you know who the participants were, all that kind of information, so you can get a much better use of that material and content going forward.
Wow, that's incredible how it's even able to track the players like that and help you just kind of predict that next graphic and stuff like that. Well, is there anything else? Does anyone want to add around the Paris topic, or do you guys want to move on to the next one?
I think the one other thing I wanted to make sure that we covered on this is that these converged technologies are now making their way down into the lower range. HDR is dominant now in all kinds of production levels, whether it's at the very high end for sports, but all the way down into what NDI is doing with NDI 6 and their HDR capabilities there. That actually has more value in production, broadcast production in particular, than going full 4K. So that combination of 4K capture with HDR is fantastic. But HDR itself really brings the immersiveness, if you will, that color depth really stands out significantly. So I want to make sure we mention that these technologies are quickly making their way down into the AV marketplace as well.
Yeah, not just the HDR, but there was also the immersive audio with the Dolby Atmos, right, in the audio. And so anyone who went to Costco and bought a soundbar that's Dolby Atmos ready, and you loaded up the right channel, the right app that was the Dolby Playout, had a pretty cool sound experience for the Olympics.
Exactly.
Very cool. All right, well, let's keep the pace going. Our next topic is auto tracking cameras. Auto tracking cameras with face and body detection have been a big focus this year. A standout example is the Advanced Image Robotics Air 1, which combines PTZ functionality with a digital cinema camera and high-end lens. It allows pre-programmed movements, auto tracking, and remote control of all of that from an iPad, which seems super useful for non-technical teams like high schools and colleges. I'm going to start off with Mike Kavanaugh on this one. How do you see advancements in auto tracking PTZ cameras and auto tracking camera heads shaping future productions? I know initially these cameras, we mainly use them in lecture halls, right? In conference rooms, very simple static setups. But newer models seem to be geared towards that professional production like sports. So what trends are you noticing and how have you seen that progress?
So absolutely. I walked out of NAB in 2024 and thought, or walked into NAB and I thought AI was just going to be everywhere. And it really wasn't in the post-production and broadcast side. Going back to Vegas in June and walking into Infocom, everybody had AI, and these companies like Data Video were able to basically effectively switch an entire show without having a single person touch or operate it based on creating AI constraints. What I really think is exciting with the automation on PTZs is it's coming down to, and as a lot of you follow me on social media, I throw in TD a church service twice a month where I have 5 PTZ cameras, one main Sony camera, and the operation. And I'm really looking at how AI, because there's sometimes in a volunteer organization level, I'm stuck both, working the Blackmagic ATAM as well, the PTZ optics, and it's very confusing, especially for volunteers to come in at the last minute, find 5 minutes before you're going live that, oh, you're now doing a secondary job. Where AI becomes more interesting is the merging of NDI. So the TriCaster Vision has 44 inputs of NDI into his system, where it doesn't make sense to have, from a cost level, 44 different camera operators across, the production. But with AI, you literally can have signals everywhere and anywhere. And a lot of that work can be done on an automated level. So you don't even have to manage camera call outs while you're tracking and switching a show with 44. The ROS code, which is also very exciting product, is 30 inputs. And the real big difference that I'm seeing is defining the NDI signals, where both ROS and Panasonic Kairos are full NDI, which means uncompressed. And that amount of data going through the process is substantially greater, but the latency is less as compared to the HX versions in NDI that compressed that take a little longer to decode, but it's a lot like 1/5 the pressure on the network. And we're seeing a lot more of the HX cameras out there on the marketplace. So seeing a lot of the greater levels of automation with AI as well, the digital video signals in IP as an input is really changing how much coverage you can have on an event.
And Mike, I think we should show everybody you're on an auto tracking camera, correct? If you want to move around, man, I think you gotta get up actually. Now, Mike's going to be our model, so everyone give Mike a round of applause while he walks around. Yeah, head up. Nice. So that's tracking, and you're able to walk throughout the space. We put him in Jeff's office today, so sorry, Jeff, you're away.
I've already.
I know this kind of leads.
Graffiti. I can't get the blinds down. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and actually, I wouldn't mind asking the control room guys about this. Chase, JJ, you guys are been setting up all these auto tracking cameras out in the field. What are your thoughts on these auto tracking cameras? What do customers do you think about when they're setting it up, or how you guys are setting it up for customers?
What we've been seeing is the first incarnation, and to be honest, what we're using on Mike is kind of an earlier model of the auto tracking, where these are great for full body standing up, giving lectures in classrooms and that type of deal. They've been fabulous for that. It's just the very latest cutting edge generation now we've been getting to the point where we can actually use these cameras in more cinematic and more interesting ways, where be it for sports or that kind of thing, whereas previously we were stuck with just full body shots sitting standing in front of a class.
Especially with like what Sony's doing with their auto tracking, AI auto tracking for facial recognition and everything. It's really developing into something that you're not just following an object, but it's actually becoming smooth, and it could be a usable shot as a TD that you like. I could cut to this live and watch that auto tracking as kind of a replacement for a manned operator.
Yeah, and one of the big things is it can actually recognize individual faces. So even when I'm going behind Chase or whatever, it knows that that's the guy, that it'll just keep following me. And they call it, what are they, something like facial invention or something like that.
Based on their AI training model.
Yeah, based on their AI models, it knows you're there even when it can't see you. So like if your face goes away, it'll follow your legs and knows where your face should be while you walk behind something.
Yeah. Well, and maybe we can ask Steve. I know there's like the Vision AI or Visionary Ross video. They demonstrated that at NAB this year on the higher end. So a lot of what we've been talking about is these pretty low cost PTZs that we can use for churches and schools. But now we get up to the big broadcasters, and they're going to need certain kind of lenses and stuff like that. What have you seen from MRMC and from Ross and these kind of higher end innovations with tracking?
So what we're seeing is the similar type of technology, but applied at a more macro scale, so that you can track individual players on a field. Once they enter the field, we know where they're at. We can track them the entire time. We can keep the camera count down rather than having to have individual cameras for each player, if you will. By tracking where they are in the field across 6 or 8 cameras, we can create shots, particularly using 4K resolutions. We can create shots that are usable regardless of where they are in the field. Even if they leave the field, we know where they went and when they come back. As a result, we're able to create replays in a much faster manner. We're able to give you stats and information. I'm sure you've seen it watching NFL games where we've got little circles sitting underneath them, and we can pull up all their stats and that kind of stuff. We're at the point now where we can give that same kind of information about an at-bat in baseball. And you can not only see the speed of the ball coming up, but how he's moving his hands, how he's done that in previous at-bats, the trajectory of the ball. All that kind of stuff is now possible because of this AI capability within the hardware and software, tracking the motion, tracking the individual objects, and tracking faces. It's pretty amazing. The other thing I'll mention on that is that, again, you'll hear me talk about immersiveness quite a bit. It creates a better experience, a more immersive experience for the consumer of that video, but it also makes it so that the TD can spend more time focusing on the creative look and feel of the shot rather than focusing on, hey, is the guy ready with it? He knows that it's going to have that information in it, so he knows he can switch and take it when he needs to. As a result, we're getting into a much higher production value as a result of having the right shots at the right time. And as that technology trickles down to what we're seeing even with the tracking from Mike, it makes it so that production value even at the lower end is possible and quite successful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. I just remember this was maybe 2 years ago, we were setting up a conference room at KeyCode where we're trying to get a camera to track who is speaking in the room. And you put up one of those Sennheiser microphones in the conference room and you said, okay, this seat zone A, this seat zone B, and just kind of followed them across the room. It's almost getting to the point where you can just pre-program these faces and you don't even need that sound recognition in zone. You just go, okay, go to Bill, go to Bob, and just follow the faces in the room. And I know on the AV side, we saw just recently some pretty interesting technology where you can even pull up 4 or 5 people in the conference room and it split screens.
Yeah.
So you see everyone.
With Cisco,
Yeah.
they have a really cool integration where they have one camera at the front of the room, keeps track of who's talking, and then you have 5 cameras all over the room, and it will just entirely automatically put multiple faces in the call, all split screen in a really cool way.
Yeah, we're actually
That gives to, go ahead.
that type of thing, Matt, now for colleges and universities for a classroom environment where we can auto track individual students. You put several cameras up and it will bring, if that student begins speaking or answering a question in a lecture, he'll get zoomed in on. And if it's part of a remote call, then he'll be emphasized. But the professor can see every student on every camera, and then he'll bring it to the fore automatically. So he doesn't have to focus on highlighting anybody. It just all happens. And that point of view that needs to be focused, all that AI now can make it possible for him to see who's talking. And what kind of response they have. So now he can see if that student really had the answer correct, or be able to give that student maybe more help if they need. A lot of the rest are very interested in that type of approach.
Yeah, and they're also doing that as a digital. So you still have the wide shot, and then digitally it will zoom into the person who's speaking. You just one camera angle, the actual zoom of the lens doesn't change.
Correct.
Pushes in digitally to the person.
That's one of the advantages of 4K cameras. You may not be producing in 4K, but capturing the image in 4K allows you to move anywhere within that frame to capture what you need for an individual event.
And
Very cool. Well, I'm gonna move on if that's okay. We're gonna try to push along to IP-based workflows. Jeffrey, you're actually up on this one. So IP-based workflows, another huge topic this year, are becoming the norm with a range of protocols to choose from budget-friendly government and education projects. NDI often leads the way. For example, we had a city that saved $600K using NDI instead of a baseband run for their facility refresh this past year. It's on our website if you want to look for it, City of Aurora. On the other hand, SMPTE 2110 dominates high-end uncompressed workflows for broadcast, newsrooms, and sports, and we're going to get to that with Steve in a little bit. But let's start with NDI. Jeff, in the control room, do most of these installs? Jeff with control room does most of these installs. What trends are you seeing in NDI installations at Key Code Media? Are there noteworthy new products getting installed or updates? I know NDI 6 came out. What stands out to you as far as NDI in 2024?
Sure, there's a couple things there. And we're actually up to 6.1. It just came out a little bit ago. One of the things that's interesting is, we were talking about the HDR and how it's trickling down. The thing is, a lot of people don't realize just how important that is. If you look at Mike Kavanaugh and you look at me, we are victims of lack of HDR. I can make a building appear. Here it is. So
Yeah.
the thing is, if I was in an HDR camera, you would see my face. You would have no blur. You'd see the building. You'd see everything. So this is getting down deeper into, any place that's got, Windows as a back plane. So you've got people that are using this technology for new and better ways and be able to see more and see more clearly. Because, as you can tell, my focus is soft because of the light behind me. The other thing we're also seeing is the NDI split away from NewTek when Viz purchased them in 2019. And what happened at that point is the ecosystem became open. It went from I don't know if anyone ever had an iPhone 1, but there were only Apple apps at that point. And finally they opened it up and everyone was, it just allowed all sorts of really cool stuff to happen. So the fact that it's opened up has, and it's now finally reached its legs, because for a while it was a little more tied together with Viz still. They had some people that were working in the two organizations. And now that that's open, you're getting things like Carbonite Code, you're getting the quick link stuff, and it's opened up a lot more choices for people to be able to pick different ways of working. You're not stuck living in a TriCaster world because it's NDI. There are other tools out that are doing that, and they're adding all this stuff on. The other really cool thing that's come up is Bridge. So Bridge came out in NDI 5, I believe, and what it was then was, okay, you had a computer and the network sitting behind it that built all the NDI stuff, and those two computers talked to each other. That was a connectivity. So what we've done now is they are putting Bridge into devices. So instead of having to have it connect to a computer and this entire bunch of things, you can have a number of different sources that then they bridge themselves back to the core network, which is across the WAN. It's, it could be across the city, across the state, across the country. And those sources now can add in, because the bridge technology is built into the device. It's not part of the network. So in this model that you're showing there, each device in network B would individually connect. There's not a central choke point, because as we discovered back in the day when we used to do events, that choke point is a little difficult.
Yeah,
BJ, what were we going to say?
I was gonna, I just did. It was a really small radio. It was a radio show with a couple hosts, and one of the hosts moves back and forth between, like, I think Oregon and Palm Springs all the time, and so she just drags her PTZ back and forth with her. Using Bridge makes it a cinch to just bring her video and audio straight into straight into the studio, and we now don't have to do any level of configuration. As once we programmed in where the bridge was onto the camera, you don't need to do any level of configuration to a computer or to anything like that. It makes it a lot cleaner to bring that video back and forth the way you want it.
Yeah,
Very cool.
Simple enough for talent to do it. That's the whole point.
And if talent can do it,
And Mike Kavanaugh, Mike, I was going to say you've been deep in these video switchers that Jeff's talking about. I mean, it seems like TriCaster was really the only one for a while. I mean, there was other options as well, but recently you had the Quick Links Pro, which kind of filled in this TC2 gap while the TriCaster was waiting to release the Vision Pro. But it has a host of ton of other features that are kind of on that newer TD, it's got kind of that newer sense, like the kind of vMix kind of features in it that might attract a younger user. And then you have obviously on the ROS side, the Carbonite code. So what are you thinking, Mike, on these video switchers that are coming out that are just all NDI ready, and where do they fit?
Well, I think everybody's really struggling with that. And I think the real key thing is where vMix, QuickLink, and VizRT are all able to handle the HX signal. And, in going out there and, talking with Ross and Panasonic specifically, they are still trying to go from full NDI to HX. And I think that's a big issue because the full NDI cameras are substantially more expensive. Most of the clients have already, purchased a lot of HX that they just want to integrate into their network, into their switch system, and have low-cost systems. And the conversion is a little bit wonky. We're able to do it, but we are talking extensively with the NDI team, with Ross Video, with Panasonic to say, really lean into HX and take advantage of that, because at the end of the day, even though it's live broadcast and that everyone says that's what full NDI is for, we know by the end user at the end point of either streaming on YouTube or in your home off a cable system, you can be up to 20 seconds delayed on the picture that you're seeing as compared to when it happened. So that concept really working through and having, ubiquity between camera sources and not mattering whether it's HX or full NDI or integrating, SMPTE 2110, very interested in the panel's take on what Dante AV is doing and how that may impact, IP networks for cameras in the future as well.
Yeah, you mentioned Dante. That's another one that we're going to talk. Maybe if we get to the questions later from the audience, I think we'll get into that. Really cool. So NDI 6, HDR, more NDI video switchers available, and Bridge just connecting different control rooms, different cameras to control rooms.
Bridge is all really nice.
And
as we were talking, we were talking about HX. Bridge will also just convert HX streams to full NDI as a stopgap. So that's one of the really awesome things is NDI has all sorts of quick fix functionality that a lot of, you would take a whole rack of format converters. Now it's just a PC in your rack.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to move it over to Steve. Steve, let's move to SMPTE 2110. The other option that has really been blowing up in the last few years. I know you've been involved in transitioning sports stadiums and newsrooms and PBS stations to 2110. And I know it's been getting a little bit easier over the years. We mentioned earlier that Blackmagic introduced 15 new 2110 products in NAB 2024, which is kind of a canary in the coal mine type situation. Steve, are we finally starting to see mass adoption of 2110 for facility upgrades that have traditionally gone to be like a 12G baseband?
Yeah, we are, and it's because the tools are coming down in price, and the production value is starting to really show to the fore. Some of the earliest adopters of it were in live production around trucks. Simply reducing the amount of physical cabling that had to be on a truck was significant. Taking 30% of the weight of the truck just for the cabling that was inside, and that's been reduced by 60-70% in some cases. The ability to get multiple signals on a single piece of fiber, 100K or 100 gig connections to the spine of the network. Those types of things are now affordable and reducing the total number of cables needed in a plant. As an example, a facility we are just completing now for KMGH in Denver, Colorado, their total wire count is down significantly, and the amount of space needed in the wire trays is quite low compared to what it would have been with a 12G SDI type of approach. So there's all kinds of other factors that tie into that. Another one is the power reduction. You've got lots of subscribers to a given IP signal, and so you're using that multicast. You're able to reduce the number of individual feeds going to individual devices. Everybody's just picking up that information on the network, and getting what they need to process or to display or whatever else might need to be done. So that's finding its way down into smaller and smaller productions. I've got a client that does this kind of corporate work, corporate AV work, and reducing the number of cables that they have to carry in their equipment rack, or that they have to run into a facility to do IMAG and video work for corporate events, whether they're in a hotel ballroom or a large NFL stadium. It's made a huge impact on what they're able to do. The other part is, once you're in that IP domain, your ability to access services running on standard servers and computers radically increases. Chase just mentioned that, it used to be that you had a bunch of individual pieces you had to have to do some of the production stuff. Now it's just a PC that you're using. That's really come to the fore and is only going to get better. That's lowering the cost of adoption, as well as enabling you to leverage new technologies as they come out. The biggest problem we got right now is the adoption of NMOS. We're seeing that grow, but nowhere near as fast as the adoption of SMPTE 2110 by itself. The NMOS part is critical as well, because that makes it so that all the people's, every vendor's products can talk more easily to each other. It's, a unified control platform. And that's actually the window of opportunity that Dante has. It's that the audio control portion was limited in the audio world. They've kind of satisfied that, and now they're seeing that, hey, it's not that tough to do video essence on an IP packet. So they're developing their own standard there, but it's really based around how they can control it. So the control and orchestration part is just as big it's just as important as the transport of the packets themselves. The good news on that front is that we got people all the way down to Elgato with their Stream Deck products, the Stream Deck Studio, that are incorporating NMOS so that they can now have direct control in a low cost orchestration layer of a 2110 installation. So for the AV guys, they can now have easy access to it, affordable access, as well as it'll satisfy the needs of a high-end sports production facility or television station.
Wow, that's really interesting. Does anyone else have any thoughts on 2110 and how it's grown this year? My only comment, Steve, I remember we've been talking about this for years now. It just seemed like back even just a couple of years ago, it's like, oh, it's all there, but there's a prompter, or this camera needs this adapter, and it just kind of seems like it's all native now. But anyone have some thoughts on 2110 and what you've seen and how this technology has grown?
Well, I can say on my side, Matt, both between NDI and 2110, that the traditional video engineer's skills have to really evolve and really get that IP, IT, CCNA updates, and recognize that it's no longer plugging in a cable into a router or patch bay, but real time having to do updates and understanding what the technology platform is, understanding your staff skills, and ensuring there's a progress so that they can be trained and efficient and having the appropriate people. There are a lot of efficiencies of 2110. I mean, we're pricing out 12G and the limitations of how far a copper cable can go and also how much it weighs, and just brings down the facility, where Steve can give some, input on, one Cat 6A cable is now porting multiple streams of video and audio, but conceptually understanding and looking at, the drawings from a Vectorworks or an AutoCAD is a different way now to approach how signal flow works in an IP world. So I think a big issue will really be transitioning, the labor market and the staffing requirements to be trained up on that, and really becoming, Arista, Cisco, Netgear specific. Understanding signal flow is now data flow, and how to troubleshoot that quickly and how to maintain it. And I do have something I want to bring up about overall broadcast. I mean, Nielsen's saying that the overall cable broadcasting is dropping at about 10% a quarter. And that's a significant aspect that, the traditional stations are really challenged with having to make a pivot, where you have things like the Joe Rogan experience that, some people are saying that 3-hour interview that President-elect Trump did, flipped the election. So how communication is going on. And literally, for our clients out there looking and thinking about, how I can create a studio, we literally can get you up and running for way below $10,000, where you can start having content. And think about this as, the copier machine of the 80s or the fax machine of the early 90s, and how you're able to publish content, have it compelling. A kudos to Matt and the entire marketing team. We just surpassed 5,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. And if you look at it, we really pivoted during COVID and decided to start broadcasting, for lack of a better word, to quote a Steve Ballmer, eating our own dog food, and really leaning into communicating our messages through video. And it substantially helped us grow our revenues from a business perspective. So even if you're not in the traditional world of broadcasting, really start building what is your media delivery strategy that you have. And, do a plug of Key Code Media. We can help you figure that out and be able to, build an executive summary to your executive team on why they need to start investing in new ways to communicate to stakeholders, to end users, to internally within the company, and really upping your game from production. Because when you have people working at home, the fight for eyeballs is great. And the more compelling the content you have, and the more ability that you have to very quickly get your messaging out over video, everybody can have their own broadcasting station now, and everybody should.
Great. And I'm going to move on to remote production and contribution now, just because the time I'm looking at it, we got to keep moving. So remote contribution operators, contributors have seen significant improvements in quality and available tools. For instance, ClearCom has Agent IC app, allows crew members to use their iPhone as an intercom, enabling communication from virtually anywhere. So you have intercom anywhere. Similarly, we mentioned earlier that Advanced Image Robotics offers full remote camera control via an app as well, iPad app. Mike Kavanaugh, what trends are you seeing in the remote production and contribution workflow space? Are there any standout solutions that are transforming how teams operate remotely, live view, kill-view, and so on?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And we actually leaned into live view many years ago in the early 2010, where we had clients that were doing lower budget fights, Golden Boy promotions, and then they all of a sudden realized they didn't need to move their control room. They could just send a camera operator out, have them with a couple live view packets, and be able to do a show and remotely broadcast that, which substantially lowered their ability to go to market from a cost perspective, which is just really compelling. Once again, it's how can you have high quality content that's compelling and have it produced at the lowest possible cost, and being able to have remote contributions. We have a local television station here, one of the 3 letters, that during COVID, we set up their expression artists on a ROS workflow to be working fully from home. And, people want to work from home. It's their life of quality is better. And the technologies, LiveView's been definitely the leader. integrating together 5G. Killaview has found some things that are very exciting. We're working on our side with, some chip providers where we're able to provide very low cost and, pay as you go type models on the cellular, 3G, 4G, 5G world, and really trying to look at the end to end, allowing people to be anywhere, contribute anywhere, which lowers the cost and also increases the quality of the production.
Nice. And I know we did talk quite a bit about remote production earlier. We talked about the Olympics, we talked about Starlink and 5G, but just before we move on, is there any other comments, Jeff or Steve, on remote production that you found compelling that was a little different this year from the past?
Well, I mean, the live view thing, not having to have satellite trucks, it's just huge. So Sports Video Group was at Midtown Hilton, and something happened there a couple of weeks ago. So people continually were doing live shots out on 54th. You'd walk out, it's just two folks, one with a live view and the camera and the reporter, and that's it. It saves you having to buy a lot of vehicles with satellite trucks and then figure out where you microwave or beam stuff off of. So it reduces your ask in terms of E&G.
Yeah, also opportunities you wouldn't have otherwise. We did a shoot from a boat where, like, you're not gonna, mounting a satellite on a boat is on a speedboat is not a thing you can do. Mounting a satellite, putting a couple live views, a couple miles off the coast was a great time.
Yeah, and then using that 5G network to backhaul it onto Starlink so that you can do remote production anywhere without a satellite truck and have it be much closer to real time. I was mentioning in some of our pre-discussions that the typical latency on a Starlink connection is between 20 and 40 milliseconds, as opposed to 600 milliseconds for a geostationary link. That brings you into a single frame or 2 frames of delay, so that you can actually cut something live using a Starlink type of backhaul link, and that's what we saw at the Paris Olympics. The cool part about that is low Earth orbit satellites are going to become ubiquitous. Starlink's not the only option that will be there in the future, so look for that to enable remote production even more.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, I'm really excited about what we're moving to next. We're moving to our broadcast and live production product lightning round sound effect. So each of you are going to quickly go over your favorite live production product for 2024. I'm going to put on my Toad hat for this one as well. So let's kind of go around. Steve, let's start with you. What was your favorite broadcast and live production product for the year?
Well, this might surprise you, me being kind of a high-end technology geek, but my number one product this year was the Netgear M4350 series of network switches that are PTP capable and support Dante and other AV standards. The reason why I chose that one is that brings it down, the switch fabric down into the affordability range for not just AV, but for high schools even. And so we can see all this IP-based production now able to be done simply and easily using affordable switch fabrics.
Very cool. Jeff, how about you?
There's so much cool stuff out in the broadcast world that came out this year. But I'm also going to go with the Steve thing. The new Blue Effects has instant replay as part of the Captivate product. It's an extremely low cost of entry to get into instant replay for, high school or really low level college sports. And it's a great little product.
Awesome. Mike, what about you?
I like what QuickLink came out with a product called Studio Edge, which effectively transforms how you can bring people in remotely, allowing, combination of remote guests, having sort of that green room communication and having real-time group conversations. And I think that's really going to explode out in the market in 2025, allowing people to have higher quality, better based productions, including Keycode Media.
All right. So that's going to wrap up our live production. Thank you, everyone.